another Chicago sports podcast for you guys. We're going to be talking about the Bulls. We're going to be talking about the Hawks going on the last week. But Dan, was there something else that happened this week?
I don't remember. I
Was
mean,
it like
the
news about the
last
Chicago Fire or something?
Chicago Fire, Chicago Sky. I think Angel
I
Reese
don't
started a new league, right? Something like that. Um,
I don't
I don't.
remember. Like,
All I know is that the last year has been really difficult, and like we've always had these podcasts talking to you
yeah.
guys about how hard, especially teams like Chicago Bears have been playing and striving to find somebody.
I feel
I
like
don't
the
know if I've
news
heard
had
many
something to do with the
changes.
Chicago Bears.
You think so? See, I've been checking my phone. I'm not sure if I've seen anything.
I don't I'm trying to think, man. Obviously, we know what the news is. Chicago Bears, we have a brand new head coach. We'll be diving into that as well. And I've been ecstatic this whole entire week. Every day on my Twitter, it's been loaded with, new information about what's going on with the Bears, what's going on, obviously, with all the other sports. But
Mhm.
let's get it started. My name's Tyler. I'm joined alongside
Daniel, how is everyone doing? Chicago got a BJ, everyone. Chicago just got a BJ. We are very, very
Bear
excited about it.
down.
Bear
Oh
down.
my God, man.
And Tyler's not wrong. My phone as well has been blowing up every other minute. He is on every podcast. He's on every streaming. He's on every single website. And every article is about Ben Johnson. Chicago, you deserve this. It is finally time to, praise the new coach. We have somebody that is offensive minded for Caleb, someone that fits the scheme, someone that fits the leader of men type. And everything he said has been perfect in every interview. I beg you guys, if you haven't watched anything, type in Ben Johnson on YouTube and watch the first 5 videos. Because I swear to God, all 5 of them are completely different. He says a lot of new information. So welcome to Chicago, Ben Johnson.
Welcome to Chicago, Ben Johnson. I am beyond ecstatic, man. This was my number one choice overall for the Bears. Obviously a lot of people are jumping back and forth. Who should the Bears get? Should they get somebody, I'll pop up this lower third right now for you guys. Obviously, Ben Johnson, new Bears head coach. This is where we're going to start off this podcast with today. But obviously, a lot of people talking about what the Bears need in a new head coach. Obviously, they need a culture shift, in the locker room. A lot of people before this, obviously this hire happened, a lot of people wanted a coach with obviously who's been a head coach before. Mike McCarthy was on the radar for a little bit. A lot of people discussed Pete Carroll potentially, but the Bears did not go in that direction, obviously. They wanted to go with somebody who has experience in the offensive mind and offensive scheme. And this is what the Bears went with. They got their guy. As soon as the Lions lost to the Commanders last weekend, that nobody expected that. Nobody expected the Commanders to come into Detroit and basically, whoop the number one team. 15 wins they had. The Lions had 15 wins. They were on a break for about a month. Commanders whooped them on their own field. And all it took the Bears was one day. One day to basically get to Ben Johnson, talk to him, fly him into Pewaukee Airport in Wheeling, Illinois. Obviously, you saw probably on Twitter, everyone's like, private jet coming into
Interesting.
from Michigan to Palatine. Or no, it was Wheeling over there.
Yeah, Wheeling.
People were, trying to figure out what happened. And we got the news, I believe it was this Monday or Tuesday. I forgot which day it was with the news.
It was, if the game was Sunday, it definitely was Tuesday. Right?
I think it was Tuesday. I believe it was
must have been Tuesday.
But obviously, you guys all know the news. Ben Johnson is the new head coach for the Bears. And this was on Monday because Tuesday they didn't do anything. He came in and flew in. That's why I recall. Wednesday was the day he had his introductory press conference with the media in front of everybody. Everyone was tuned into that. Everyone was super excited for that. And guess what? He's ours, man. Ben Johnson is ours.
He can't leave.
He's staying. Cannot leave. The number one candidate that we got Peter in the chat again. Here he goes. He just bared down all over his screen. I appreciate. We've been doing that all week, man.
Yeah, I got to wipe
Bearing
it
down, bro.
I got a lot of screens in front of me here. I got a lot of cleaning to do.
But guess what, guys? Ben Johnson is the Bears' new head coach. Let's get some stats with you guys about Ben Johnson. Yeah. So, everyone, guys, the Bears did it. They got Ben Johnson, the number one coach candidate that was on every team's radar, the Raiders' radar, the Jaguars' radar. Basically, every team was looking at Ben Johnson, the offensive scheme.
Every team with an opening, yeah.
Exactly. So, obviously, it was reported on Monday by Adam Schefter and lots of other sports reporters that the Chicago Bears will hire offensive coordinator Ben Johnson become the franchise's new head coach. And a little bit about Ben Johnson. So Ben Johnson was promoted to the offensive coordinator in 2022. So he had 2 years of experience with the Lions being their offensive coordinator with Dan Campbell as their head coach. And after spending 3 seasons with the Lions and multiple roles on the coaching staff, he came to Detroit in 2019 as the offensive quality control coach and was heavily involved in the passing game during the Lions head coach, Dan Campbell's first season as Detroit. So as soon as he I can't do any English today because I'm just so pumped right now. But
Yeah.
as soon as he came to Detroit, he was already in the offensive playbook with, Dan Campbell. So he's been offensive coordinator since 2022. He has 2 years of experience with that. And, he's been with Detroit since 2019. So he has a lot of experience with coaching so far. Obviously, no head coaching experience, but he's got, coaching experience under his belt.
He has the necessary tools, let's say. Like in a lot of the interviews, everyone's asking the question, how do you feel about that? There's never been a coach to have changed from an offensive coordinator to immediately fulfill their goals in their first season, So, and he said, simply put, like, it's just the path that has been laid before me. I've excelled at every single position, so why not excel at the head coach position? That's the only thing left. And he said that a lot of this wouldn't have happened if I recall the name of the old offensive coordinator. Was that Matt Patricia or no? Who was the old offensive coordinator before Ben Johnson?
I think Matt Patricia was the Patriots, man. That's where I remember Matt Patricia from.
Yeah, I don't remember, but he
before
said
before Ben Johnson. You might be right about that. You actually might be.
I don't remember. It was definitely someone from the Patriots. It was the guy with the short guy, big brown beard. He said that Ben Johnson was given a chance to either stay in Detroit with Dan Campbell or leave to Jacksonville with Urban Meyer, which was the current coach at that time, when he said he had a lot of connections with Urban Meyer at that point. So he said that the trajectory that he took and the decisions that he made have always led to him having successful seasons and playing really well. So he's definitely thankful for the time he had at Detroit. It's a big part of what the Bears need to talk about, right? Detroit had a great team. We can't sit here and say that they're the enemies.
Obviously, 15 wins, man. They were a great team, number one team in the NFC. They just
best offense, most points scored in the last 2 seasons. So you got to take that into account. Where we're sitting here, talking about, screw Detroit. Detroit's an enemy. At the end of the day, a lot of what we saw in Detroit is hopefully what we're going to see in Chicago here. And
exactly.
I would take any single part of that.
Yeah. No, obviously, it. Obviously, no one, like kind of brought up before, no one expected the Lions to be out first round. The defense just, deteriorated during that game. Aaron Glenn didn't have all of his key pieces, Aiden Hutchinson and all that. So that's why they were a first round knockout in the, obviously the first round of the playoffs and the divisional round. But, obviously that allowed the Bears to swoop in, get Ben Johnson. He's getting the reports right now are $13 million a year for Ben Johnson. There's no length yet. We haven't found out how long, obviously we found out about Pete Carroll's about 3 years. It's a 4-year contract with 3 years guaranteed. That's what actually Peter brought up right here. He did say, speaking of the Raiders, they signed Pete Carroll today, 3-year deal, 4-year option. Bears got the better option. They did. They got the best option, and they need a young guy to revive this offense. I completely agree with you, Peter. The old mindset, obviously the old-minded coaches aren't bad. I'm not saying they're terrible, but, what the Bears needed is a new, fresh mind, new offense, a guy who hasn't had the same playbook for the last 25, 30 years. Ben Johnson said he's going to, rip the tree down, and he's going to start from scratch with Caleb. He's going to develop these plays with him. He's going to, help out, obviously Caleb in his progression.
Exactly, and that's something that we can trust him with because he's done that several times before. Now, he did only do that once as an offensive coordinator, but he did say that a lot of the plays that he ran in Detroit were of his own existence, that he brought it up himself, and he created all of that. So he's going to do it just again. He said a lot of it in his interviews. He cannot wait for spring to begin because I think spring is probably the first overall moment where he gets an opportunity to build a playbook, communicate more with Caleb, and try to get some balls thrown. So that's going to be really exciting to see what the playbook looks like. Tyler and I were talking right before the podcast started. Get every play that the Bears ran last year, put it in a fire, and have a ceremony. Every third and long play,
team have Caleb throw the match in front of every
the match. Everyone say one last word to the playbook.
Ben Johnson saying "hoorah" to everybody. Hoorah, hoorah!
Yeah, show me the pages of the 3rd and 3. Show me every single play they ran for 3rd and 3. And honestly, they should build a play that's very much the opposite of that.
We need the screen pass book to get ran over by a truck, burnt in a fire, and then get taken in a spaceship out to the moon and landed on the moon and never let it come back. That's what we need with our screen pass book.
Stick it in a missile and just shoot it into the sky. Yeah, exactly.
Peter did say here, Matt Patricia was the head coach of the Lions before Dan Campbell.
Okay.
So it wasn't off. Yeah, that's what I recall. And then the offensive coordinator before Ben Johnson was Anthony Lynn. Just like seems like so long ago that was. It seems like Dan Campbell has been the head coach for a decent while now. Look at the culture shift that Dan Campbell did with that Lions. But
Exactly.
so a little bit more about Ben Johnson. So, Ben Johnson, who's been the Lions offensive coordinator the past 3 seasons, will fill the vacated job by Matt Eberflus when he was fired on November 29th. He will be the 19th head coach in franchise history in the 105-year existence. So a little bit about how he got hired. Basically, the Bears conducted a virtual interview with Ben Johnson on January 11th. Obviously, this is the point where he was still on the team, couldn't do any in-person interviews because the Lions were still in the playoffs. During the first round bye, and he also interviewed with the Jaguars, the Raiders, and the Patriots. So there are 4 teams that were on his radar. But as we heard, and with that press conference interview on Wednesday, we didn't write down all of the quotes because there were so many quotes, but he did say the Bears were like his number 1 team on the radar. And he did say something about how having a quarterback helps when looking for teams. Obviously the Raiders, everyone said Tom Brady's influence for him going to the Raiders was definitely high. Obviously
it was high, but he's not a quarterback anymore. So
he's not a quarterback. He's just a part owner in the team. That team had no GM and doesn't have a franchise quarterback under realm. Obviously the Raiders don't.
And realistically, they only have one or 2 offensive pieces that are in place, right? So Johnson already didn't have much going for that offense there.
Yeah, but 2 days later, the Raiders did get a general manager, but it was 2 weeks too late. They fired the general manager too late, and the Jaguars did as well. The Bears were the best team fit for Ben Johnson. He did say, he quoted at the thing, I wanted to stay in the same division. I wanted to be in this division. Obviously, I remember you watched the press conference after it happened. I know you were in the middle of doing some. I watched it live. I was almost in tears watching this because he just
so cool.
He went into this press conference with no, what I remember of Matt Eberflus, and I'm not trying to point fingers at different head coaches in the past, but he had everything always written down. It's like somebody prepared it for him, or maybe he prepared his notes, but maybe he hired somebody to do it. But his first introductory press conference, Ben Johnson walked into that introductory press conference, no notes, was staring at everybody, George McCaskey, Caleb, DJ Moore around the room, and was just everything was coming out of his head. He knew what to say. And for the people that said Ben Johnson doesn't have that voice to be a head coach, that first press conference, man,
he has it.
I think that team is fired up, man. He said, be ready to, prepare. He
gives the same energy that like Sean McVay or Kevin O'Connell brings, which is somebody that also at one particular point didn't believe in them, especially as a head coach. He has the same poise, but he's got the same attitude and leadership that I think is different. So we can't compare him ultimately to Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's a different type of species, different animal.
Exactly.
But the Ben Johnson coaching tree, the coaches that he worked under, definitely influenced the way that he's going to, perceive the coaching job. And I'm super excited. You're so right about it.
Yeah. And Peter said this in the chat. I don't think Ben Johnson wanted to kiss his kids on the lips like Tom and Coach Sador. Yeah, I don't think he wants to either. It was what I kind of talk. It's like in the same realm as kind of what you just said right here. Like, I loved the video with Ben Johnson and his family coming in, into House Hall, the whole entire greeting, everybody's clapping for him. And, Ben Johnson says, now everybody get back to work. He's joking around with everybody, but his family looked happy. His kids looked happy. He looked especially happy. And I am glad he's with the Chicago Bears.
That's where he wants to be.
He was my number 1 option from the start. Obviously, I went back and forth with him and McCarthy, but McCarthy didn't even have success in Dallas with Dak Prescott, their franchise guy, and CeeDee Lamb. He had no success there. Didn't even bring him to the playoffs. So that's why Ben Johnson was my number 1. And that's why I am beyond excited. For
Bears got one right. For everyone that wants to know how the last season went, at least forget about all that. At least we got one thing right, and that's building towards the new year.
And for all the people that say, "Oh, he looks exactly like Adam Gase from New York Jets," okay, people might look like other people, but are they gonna, be exactly the same as them?
Give him an opportunity. Yeah, give him an opportunity. At the end of the day, he has Caleb, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and a healthy running back. He's gonna get an offensive line in the draft, offensive line, and it's hard to not build around this team for a good case. And the most important thing that I have to take away from it each time is that Caleb's success is Ben Johnson's success. So even if the Bears do fail to reach any goals within the first few weeks of playing football, those are goals that they understand, right? That they're going to have to reach at some point. And Ben Johnson isn't on a 1-year deal. We were so used to this idea of, the Matt Nagy and the Eberflus era that after every season there was a wish of like, hey, this guy needs to get fired. Ben Johnson might be the first coach we have that will fulfill that 5-year duty that he has, and maybe an extension, even if the team is underperforming because of the pedigree that he brings and the coach that he is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're talking generational.
Yeah. So basically, kind of like just so you guys kind of get a picture of how this process went for the Bears. Chicago interviewed 17 candidates for its head coaching vacancy. They didn't just, interview Ben Johnson and say that's him. 17 people they interviewed, man. Yeah. 3 of the interviews were conducted in person. Those in-person interviews were former Commanders and Panthers coach Ron Rivera, obviously former Bear as well. Former Dallas Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy, and then current Tennessee State coach Eddie George. Eddie George actually tunes into, he does a bunch of stuff with CHSN, which I work over there. I do, camera work over there. He jumps into the Chicago, the football show that we do there. It's about a half-hour show. And he was talking to the guys and he was like, I'm extremely grateful for them even like honoring me. And, or like thinking, not honoring, but, thinking about me when, trying to, get the coaching thing. And he was beyond, excited to get that, call from George McCaskey for that.
Oh, yeah.
But Ben Johnson obviously was sought after by the Raiders, the Jaguars. But as soon as Detroit lost against the Commanders, Kevin Warren and the Bears coaching staff had to jump on signing Ben Johnson as soon as possible. And he is now one of the highest paid head coaches in the National Football League at $13 million.
Yeah,
we don't know the length.
If we talk about, and even when we talk about like the highest paid coaches, $13 million is 6th on the list.
Yeah.
Right. You got Andy Reid that's at 20 and every other coach. $13 million is actually a phenomenal deal for someone that's in the top 10, but not in the top 5.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of that is going to come from winning percentage. I mean, however the Bears play, but $13 million is a phenomenal deal. And I don't know if we're going to mention this before or after, but what are the words that Ben Johnson used when he first got interviewed and then when the interview finished, right? When he first started the interview, he said, I want this job, right? Simply, I want this job. And at the end of the interview, he mentioned, did I mention I want this job still? So the idea that he came into Chicago just knowing that it's like, hey, this is my number one destination. How are you guys going to take that in, right? Am I your number one pick? So it was a great even match for both the city and the coach. So I couldn't be more excited. And you saw Caleb Williams fit for the press conference, right? He wore the Matrix fit. I don't know what kind of symbolism you guys can get from that. I'm sure Peter can come up with something really interesting, but no, it feels like a different time in Chicago now. It feels like a different vibe. It does. And I think the other teams in the NFC North are also noticing this too.
Yeah. And also, it's great when during this press conference, he's, obviously when he was with the Lions, he's like, it's great to beat the Packers 2 times a year. He's already has that mindset, beat the Packers. Obviously, I know the Bears only did it once this year, but at least we did it once. We did it for the first time since 2018 or whatever. Or no, obviously, being the Packers since 2018. Yeah. So obviously, Ben Johnson was regarded as one of the best coaching candidates this offseason, and the Chicago Bears got their guy. And obviously, me and Dan are beyond excited for what the future holds with Ben Johnson. He is gonna, like I said before, he's gonna rip this thing down. He's gonna start from scratch. We didn't put this in, but obviously this came off my head. He is only retaining like one of the coaches from the previous, era of the Chicago Bears. It's rumored that he is going to retain the special teams coordinator, Richard Hightower, because Darren Rizzi, the guy who is at the Saints, it's rumored that he might take a higher role somewhere else. So that's what it's looking like. Richard Hightower is special teams coordinator, and people are like, oh, this isn't good. But look at what Richard Hightower did with the Bears. The progression did. I was texting you about this. Beginning of the season was rough. Block kick against the Packers. There was some few errors. Obviously there were block kicks in back-to-back weeks, but he did end up fixing his mistakes. Let's talk about that last game with the Packers. Obviously that fake punt. Obviously the punt went
return touchdown, right?
Yeah, everyone flocked right when he went left. That was that. And then obviously, they did make that field goal. It wasn't him, but Cairo Santos did make that field goal. It didn't get blocked to obviously lose the game. But obviously, it's rumored that Ben Johnson's going to be making about $13 million a year. The amount of years is still disclosed. And then coaches rumored to join Ben Johnson's staff are, now we'll talk about this, Dennis Allen. He is apparently the leading candidate right now to be the defensive coordinator for the spot. No No coaches have been solidified yet since,
Hmm.
obviously Wednesday, since the introductory. He's been talking to people and stuff, but and then obviously Darren Rizzi is potentially going to be the special teams coordinator. Is looking more not like that, but
Hmm.
that was a rumor as well. So
Yeah,
once we get that
there's a lot of players and individuals that they have recommending to us.
yeah,
Obviously, like Tyler and I on Twitter every 5 minutes, and we're seeing every single report. A lot of these reports don't seem too 100% true yet. Again, a lot of Bears fans love to speculate. They're going to pick the most random name to try to give a little bit more of an advantage. But
yeah.
we're going to give you that information when we know the information. The biggest thing we got was Darren Rizzi and Dennis Allen. I know the offensive line coach of the Lions. Also, I forgot Hurley.
Dan Hurley.
Dan Hurley. So
Yeah,
he was also mentioned, but obviously no reports after that. So
that
it's
is
very likely he's not.
what I've been reading today is that might be that's like the primary candidate right now for Ben Johnson. Obviously, I've heard things. Oh, it might be, it might not. There's so many different articles out
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Once now it's like since we got Ben Johnson, once these players get hired or not players, once these coaches get hired, then it's solidified. Obviously there's the rumors about the other, but to end off the Ben Johnson talk with you guys, we're gonna obviously I see Brant in the chat has some about the games this weekend. We'll
Yeah.
talk about the games this weekend to end off the Ben Johnson chat. But just a fun fact for you guys to end off with Ben Johnson. In Ben Johnson's three seasons as the Lions offensive coordinator, the Lions were 15-15 when allowing 23 over 23 points. And that's the most victories in the league in that span. It's the second best winning percentage with over 23 points. Do you know what the Bears were?
I'm guessing bottom of the league most likely. And what number does that look like?
They were 0-25, man. The Bears were 0-25 in that category.
Never won a game. That sucks.
So that's not so obviously big shoes to fill with Ben Johnson coming into the role, but we're beyond ecstatic and we're beyond happy. Now let's get into, before we go into our UC chat with the Bulls and the Hawks, let's get into the games this weekend, man. So here we go. Brant in the chat says game predictions for the Bills and the Chiefs this Sunday. Who ends up on top? This is a great question, man. I keep jumping back and forth. I keep jumping back saying, does the NFL want the Chiefs to win? Kind of seems like it. But the Bills, what they did with the Ravens, every day I jump back and forth. Unfortunately, and I hate to say the word unfortunate with this, I'm taking the Chiefs with this. I am. I love the Bills. I would love the Bills to win. I want the Bills to, go to the Super Bowl. I want Josh Allen to get his ring. He deserves it. Obviously being MVP caliber quarterback this whole entire year, in my opinion, he should win MVP. Lamar's probably has the stats to win it, but I'm going to take the Chiefs just because they're at Arrowhead with this, or are they at Buffalo?
I believe Arrowhead, yeah, because they were the first seed.
Let me double check that real quick. But yeah, let me get your prediction, man.
I am going easily with the Bills here. I mean, it's easy to sit here and say the Chiefs are going to be the team that wins because realistically, it's how it's been the last 4 years. But I'm rooting the Bills here for personal matters and for football matters and for every matter that exists just because the Bills need to win this game for football to stay interesting for me. And I do think the Bills defense, if they can see and watch film from the Texans game and get an idea of, hey, if Kelsey is open down the middle and Kelsey only needs to get 70 yards a game for them to have a pretty good game because that's just going to be a lot of first downs. If they can do a better job with kind of solidifying that middle zone area, which they do really well with, they did really well with Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson only got a few big plays on downfield that resulted in touchdowns and a lot of rushing. So I think if the Bills defense can handle its job and Josh Allen can honestly air it out, he can hit every receiver right in the chest, then man, I'm taking the Bills here. But other than this side, what about the other side? We got the
other side. Well, this is going to be a fun one. So let's go our predictions for Commanders Eagles predictions. This is going to be a fun game. Obviously, everybody counted the Eagles out. I'm sorry, not the Eagles. The Commanders out during the Lions. Not over 90% of the bets that were wagers at sports books were on the Lions to win that game / the spread / whatever. Now, let's talk about it. Jalen Hurts is dealing with a knee injury. There's rumored today he's going to be wearing a brace on that knee. How mobile is he going to be this game? If Jalen Hurts is not going to be as mobile as the games that he's been before, I might take the Commanders, but looking who the Eagles have. Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley, this game has the highest over-under in running back history with betting. 130.5 rushing yards. Do you know how crazy that is, man?
That is crazy. It's hard for someone to get that regularly. Like,
dude.
Jeez.
Like Caleb Williams, some of these games couldn't even get 100 passing yards. Think about rushing yards with Saquon, dude. I'm not trying to compare Caleb, but I'm just thinking like off the top of my head with that, But I'm going with the Eagles. I am. They're in Philly. I know how that crowd is. I'm going with the Eagles. Jaden Daniels is playing well, but I'm going to go with the Eagles. What do you think, man?
This is a crazy division game. Let's just take a step back and understand how wild it is for these two teams to meet here at this point, with all the other teams that are in the league at this point. So I had to look it up real quick. I think this is going to come down to one specific person, and that is former Bear defensive coordinator Vic Fangio. That is now the current defensive coordinator of the Eagles. I think that guy coaches the hell out of playoff games. And even though the defense didn't look altogether that incredible versus Matthew Stafford is also one of those players that is going to play really well in each playoff game. You got to give him that chance. And also they're playing in snow. So that game wasn't altogether that easy for the defense. But, man, I think Vic Fangio is going to have his defense in line. Again, if Jaden Daniels can't get these screen passes out to Terry McLaurin, which that happened last game, and Terry McLaurin had a 60-yard touchdown, then they're not going to score that much. And I think Cooper DeJean and I think Quez Watkins, or I think it was
Quinion Mitchell,
Quez Watkins, the total different receiver.
Both rookies on that,
But it's just those two corners are going to have to play a really, really solid game, against players like Dynamic Brown and Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz. So I really do have the Eagles here. And like you said, there's one player that's going to benefit from no matter what, as long as he gets 10 or more touches, and that's Saquon Barkley.
Exactly.
And this Commanders defense didn't get built in multiple years. They got built in half a season. I don't think they're going to have enough to handle Saquon Barkley at this point. They're going to give him 30 touches, I promise.
I do think the Eagles obviously have a better defense than the Lions. The Lions defense, when the Commanders played them, was very deteriorated. They couldn't even stop any of the drives that the Commanders had. That defense was terrible. The Lions had over 500 passing yards, and they still lost that game to the Commanders. So think about that. So if the Eagles defense, like you said, can, Vic Fangio can pull his guys together, rally his troops, tell them, these are the Commanders, or whatever, and, potentially lock them down. The Eagles are going to get this because of Saquon. But we'll see how Jalen Hurts is affected with that injury. It could be either or this game. I would steer clear. Just the way I'm talking about betting standpoint, both games for me, I'm steering clear from the money line. I just don't know who's gonna, walk out at any of these games. I just want good games on both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
But now before we end off, obviously our football talk, we have Peter saying Commanders to the Super Bowl. Ooh,
I've had our friend actually mention the same thing. I went around yesterday asking every football mind I knew to ask what they kind of thought about who's going to win it. And I had only one friend, Alex, that ended up talking about the Commanders winning it. And I think that's a possible scenario. If they can get past the Eagles, they can get past anyone. But I also feel like if they get past the Eagles, Chiefs or Bills is a really hard matchup. Yeah. And where are they playing this year? Where's the Super Bowl? Is it Louisiana? Is it
I don't
New Orleans?
Know where the Super Bowl's
I think it's New Orleans. Hold because that's why Lil Wayne got mad that he didn't get to do it because he's from New Orleans.
Super Bowl location. That's what I'm looking. I didn't even know where the hell that's at this year. Hold on. It's just, it would be nice if it would just pop right up. You know what I mean? And none of these are just popping up for me. Oh, Caesars Superdome in New Orleans.
All right, and that's a pretty good football town. So I think it's gonna be a lot of fans there. But let's think about New Orleans. That might hold more Philly or Commander fans than it would Buffalo or Kansas City fans. Now, that changes a lot. I think at the end of the day, Super Bowl's all football fans, but Commanders got a chance. Commanders got a chance to make history, especially talking to Jane Daniels' standpoint, chance to make history if he hasn't already.
Now, before we move on to football or away from football, I see a few things from Peter said. A big name for defensive coordinator for the Bears is Rams assistant head coach and defensive passing game coordinator Aubrey Pleasant. He's been requested to be interviewed. I did see that yesterday, so that's a big name for them. And then obviously Hank Fraley is the guy's name, offensive line coach for the Lions. Secondary interview. But obviously with the Seahawks rumored to stay in Detroit, but it's up in the air. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, we'll see.
But We've been doing about 30 minutes of football now. Obviously, once we get those coaches for you guys, we're back every week. We're going to be bringing you guys all the different coaches the Bears are going to be picking up. Obviously, all the different moves of free agency and stuff like that. But enough of Ben Johnson and the Bears. We could talk about him for hours and hours, and I'm down to talk about him for hours and hours. But let's get into our UC chat for today. Is that backwards for you? I don't. Hold on.
I don't know.
Mine's like ew. Like mine's ugly compared to.
The UC chat.
That's all right.
UC chat.
So we're getting our UC chat for you guys. So if you guys weren't with us last week, we're starting this new segment since, the Bears season is done, where we're going to incorporate the other sports going around town. Bears took up a lot of our time. We're going to be incorporating the Blackhawks and we're going to be incorporating the Bulls with you guys. We'll talk about all the games that happen week to week. And we're not going to go super in depth with detail, but we're going to, brush the surface with like how, Blackhawks scored the goals, how the Bulls did leading scorer, why they lost, why they won, both these teams. And we'll get into that for you guys. Hopefully you guys like that. You guys can comment, see how you guys like it, see how we can incorporate a little bit more for you guys. But we're going to start off with the Bulls. Bulls talk. Dan, I know you love the Bulls.
Yeah.
Me and you will be going to the game tomorrow. I'm beyond excited for that. We'll talk about that when toward the end of the Bulls talk for you guys. But the Bulls in the last week, they had a few games on their hands. The first game that they had on their hands, we met with you guys last Thursday. And the day after was that Friday, they played the Charlotte Hornets. So it was the Bulls against the Charlotte Hornets, which I forgot to make a lower third for. I just noticed that. So, Dan, you want to start us off with the Bulls and Hornets, and I will.
Of course. So, Bulls on Hornets was last Friday on the 17th, and that was a home game for Chicago. Unfortunately, the Bulls did end up losing to the Charlotte Hornets 125 to 123. It was definitely a closer matchup. We were down in the third quarter. This was a big game for, I guess, LiAngelo Ball, Lonzo Ball, and LaMelo Ball, because this was the family reunion. It was the first time that both players were healthy and got to play against each other. So that was a pretty phenomenal game. Lonzo did play his heart out. He played really well. But Charlotte did get its 10th win of the season. Just to kind of put in perspective, Charlotte getting its 10th win. The Bulls currently have 19 wins. So they are a little bit under us when it comes to standings, but their team is, I guess, we're just a little bit more hungry against us on an away game. But the leading scorer of this game was probably one of the better games of Nikola Vucevic's career, I'd say, within the last few years. He had a 40-point game, 17 of 25 field goals, 2 for 3 from three-point, which is pretty impressive for putting up 40 points when he only had 2 shots go in for three-point, and then 13 rebounds. So he had himself a nice little double-double there. I'm very impressed with the way that he played there. I think he knows himself that this is all trade talk season. He wants to be up in the up in the conversations for other teams.
Right around the corner, man. Being February 6th, I believe.
It's coming soon. I'd say it's coming up real quick. Weeks. The Bulls this game, there was 24 teams assists for the Bulls, 18 team fouls, 14 turnovers, 14 of 40 from 3, which if you know the Bulls this year, they've been shooting really poorly, but they have been taking a lot of shots. They're definitely taking the most amount of three-pointers that they ever have in a single consecutive season for the Bulls. And they let Charlotte score 64 points in the paint, and Bulls scored 62, which is a little bit
very
less,
close in the paints to the point category.
And I think that plays a lot off Nikola Vucevic having 40 points with only making 2 three-pointers. That was that game. So that game was a little bit down, and you can kind of understand where the Bulls' mediocrity talk comes in, because these are games that we should be winning.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, at the end of the day, there's a few missing pieces still that the Bulls need to find to get little wins like this.
But the thing about this game was it was a high-scoring game for the Bulls. They didn't get blown up by 30 by a crappy team. I'm not saying they're crappy. They beat us. But, obviously the Hornets got their 10th win against us. At least they had decent offense. Vooch had 40 points. Get Vooch involved. That's obviously thinking about, what people talk about when I do stuff at the, Chicago Sports Center, Kendall Gill, Stacey Cadence, get Vooch involved, run that offense through Vooch. Yeah. It'll free things up more. Zach LaVine can get more open. And that's why Vooch had 40 points. Unfortunately, we got the loss that game, but Vooch had a great game. And, it was, at least it was a competitive game. At least we didn't get blown up by 30.
Game. Yeah.
So, going into the next game for you guys, obviously, steering away. So a few days later, so that was on Friday, on last Sunday, the 19th, the Bulls played the Trailblazers. Bulls played on January 19th. The Bulls unfortunately lost to the Trailblazers. This was a bad game for the Bulls. Trailblazers are another team that is in the bad win category. They haven't been playing really well. And the Portland got its 14th win of the season. So if you think about Portland's a little bit better than Charlotte, but the Bulls did not play good at all this game. They had no offense, and it was really bad for the Bulls. The leading scorer for the Bulls this game was Zach LaVine. He had 27 points, 10 to 21 on field goals, 2 of 7 from three-pointer, 5 assists, and 2 steals. So decent stat line for him. He didn't get to that 30 plus, which he's been kind of tallying the last, certain amount of games, which, it seems like when Zach gets to about 30 plus, we've been winning majority of those games, but he didn't get to 30 plus. And, obviously we did lose by 11, which not a close margin. 11 points is pretty far off. Stats into this game, Ayo Dosunmu he was coming off the bench just because he came back from an injury. Kobe White did get hurt this game, so I believe in the second quarter. Ayo Dosunmu did come on off the bench. He had 12 points off the bench. He had like 30 minutes because, obviously Kobe came out with that injury. So Ayo did take Kobe's minutes. He was ready to, bounce back from that injury, and he did really well with 12 points off the bench. Obviously not, 20 points, but he did well with 12. Coming back from injury, it's hard. The Bulls only scored 19 points in the second quarter. So that's a rough, getting to that 30-point, mark for each quarter is better, for each team, but they only scored 19. And then Josh Giddey did not have a good game this one. He was minus 15 when he was on the court. So Josh Giddey, not a good game for him. And you want to talk about the last few stats with this game, man?
Of course. So the Bulls got out-rebounded 50-36. So 14 rebounds can definitely change the dynamic of the way the game goes. And Bulls only had 8 offensive rebounds, which is a big thing for Vooch and Jalen Smith. So these are players that definitely have more work to do when it comes to getting the offensive rebounds, because we've been bad at this for years now.
Mm-hmm.
The Bulls have been bad at this. Andre Drummond was the only player that was getting offensive rebounds when he was on the court, and that dude would only play 8 to 11 minutes a game. So, the Bulls allowed 17 fast break points. Bulls defense, that's the big thing. Billy Donovan has never had a roster that truly was dynamic enough. And I know we could talk about Alex Caruso. We talked about this every time we can bring up Bulls and Josh Giddey, but there needs to be some answers that need to be, done. There needs to be some pointing of the fingers when it comes to the defensive side of the ball. Ayo's definitely doing his mark. Kobe is, trying his best defensively.
Mm-hmm.
P. Will, on the other hand, is very much a disappointment when it comes to both sides of the ball. He is letting loose on both ends. There needs to be some changes done there. But on to the next game, we're going to give you some better news here, because, 2 straight losses can be fixed with a nice little win. And my brother was at this game. Man. Yeah, my brother was at this game. My brother is a Los Angeles native. He went to go see the Inuit Dome for the first time, and he was sending me loads of videos, loads of photos, because I really wanted to see what that fan wall looked like. And honestly, it was really pathetic for you guys, to be honest. He told me that the game was near end from no matter where, from the first quarter to the fourth quarter. There was not a lot of people in there. There was probably 40% was filled up for a Monday night game, which is kind of understandable in Los Angeles. But at least for the UC, the Bulls are at least always going to put up over 60% capacity no matter what day of the week. So Bulls played the Los Angeles Clippers in Los Angeles. The Bulls did beat them 112-99. And the Clippers aren't so bad of a roster this season. I mean, obviously the whole idea with Kawhi and the departure of PG and how that's affecting them, I think they're going to have a very similar stat line to the way things ended for them last year. But they are ranked 5th in the Western Conference, which is not a surprise, but also should be a little bit of a surprise with the roster build they have there. So Zach LaVine had probably one of his best games in the last few weeks. He had 35 points. He was 11 of 21 field goals. He was 5 of 12 for the 3-point line, and he was plus 20 when on the court. So that means that his ability at both ends of the court was really helping us provide, scoring in that capacity. So
I did just look, because I know we kind of worked on this document, a few days ago. The Clippers are now in 6th place. The Lakers did jump them, so the Clippers are in 6th place right now. Move them down. But like kind of talking about Zach LaVine, man. When he performs really well, this team performs well. It just clearly shows. Obviously, that's why there's a reason why there's a few players that are on that trade radar right now. Zach LaVine being one of them. Nikola Vucevic being another one, Kobe White potentially, but he's injured right now. I don't know how many people would want to take an injured player, but Zach LaVine did perform very well this game, so good for Zach. Plus 20 on the court, that's a great stat line for him. The Bulls did outscore the Clippers 36-16, so in the third quarter, which is pretty good. It's really good. Obviously, we've been seeing this with the game that happened yesterday, which we'll talk about obviously in a few games from now, but that was the complete polar opposite, and that's why the Bulls lost that game. The Bulls had like 18 points, and the Warriors yesterday had like 32 or something like that. But THT had 18 bench points, 4 from 3, so good use of THT off the bench. And the Bulls out rebounded the Clippers 54-40. So that is a good stat line. Usually, if you get
That's
more
what I like to see.
rebounds, you usually
I
get
think
the win.
Donovan had a little bit of a conversation there and letting the guys know, hey, like we need to have a little bit more energy when it comes to the glass. So
Yeah.
that made a lot of sense. Going into the next game, right? We had a big little West Coast trip the last 4 games. We made our way on Monday, January 20th, into Golden State to face the Warriors.
I think the date's wrong for that. I think I remember.
That was yesterday. Yeah,
So,
sorry, I just realized.
that is
that was my bad.
No, I think I did. Yeah, we're good. Here, hold on. There we go.
My bad. Sometimes Tyler puts something on the projector and I just read. That's my job. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, the game was actually yesterday. It was held yesterday night in Golden State. The Bulls did lose this game. This was a pretty pathetic performance from the Bulls here. There wasn't a lot of energy. It was tied at half. We'll get into kind of the details on how the Bulls were affected in this loss, but they lost 131-106, which the game was not that far off when it came to the second and third quarter. The Warriors are ranked 11th in the Western Conference at the moment after this win, which is actually worse than the Bulls in their division, but they do. I would say they, at the end of the day, do have a better roster. I mean, when you have Stephen Curry there, and they do have aspirations for playoffs, but we'll see how that leads out. The Bulls' leading scorer, as always, you guessed it, Bulls' leading scorer was Julian Phillips. No, I'm kidding. It was Zach LaVine with 24 points, 6 of 13 field goal, 3 of 6 from 3 points, so 50%, and 9 of 12 from the free throw. Free throw line was a big advantage that the Golden State Warriors had this game, so the stat isn't here, but I believe Golden State was 100%, 12 of 12 on their free throws. The Bulls were somewhere near 79%. I think they missed a good eight free throws at the line, so it wouldn't have changed the game, but it does give you an idea of there's so many facets of the Bulls games that need to be worked on, especially in these long road games.
Yeah, so the Bulls with this game yesterday, did they perform terrible? No, they really just got out-hooped, man. That's what happened. Bench players came in for the Warriors. They performed really well. Like I think last name was Pope for the team. He had the most points. It was his 7th career NBA star, and he had like the most career night for him and stuff like that. He had like 20 points or something like that. But yeah, so they just really did get out-hooped yesterday, unfortunately, and
And this stat tells it all.
Yeah.
This next stat tells it all, Ty. What do you think?
Well, the largest lead being at 31 points, pretty much, right? Yeah. It's a rough one. That's a rough one.
Oh, did you talk about the bench points?
Oh, I did not talk about the bench points.
Ooh,
yeah.
This is what I'm talking about.
Well, obviously, kind of talking about the largest lead of the Warriors having 31 points. And how did the Warriors get a 31-point lead at halftime? The Warriors bench was crazy, man. Do you know how many points the Warriors bench scored? 82. 82 bench points. That is ridiculous. How many team points did the Bulls have? They had 106, so almost as many points as the whole entire Bulls team.
Yeah, so the Warriors bench put up 82 points. The Bulls put up exactly half of that. The Bulls bench only put up 41 points. Again, you said it right. Bulls just got out-hooped. At the end of the day, I wouldn't say it's like better coaching or anything like that. I think their players just came out with a little more energy at home game for them. Especially coming off of a loss at Inuit Dome. I would have loved to see a win here, but it's just the way it goes. And I saw
Sometimes the way she goes, bud.
There was a comment here that I love the idea of that said, I guess Dan is a fan of mediocre basketball. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm a fan of mediocre basketball if that says we're going to get our first round pick from San Antonio. I'm fine with that. Don't give me play-in. Don't give me any of that. Give me 10 games under 500 and I'll be a fan. But it's bad. It's bad watch. I mean,
yeah.
The Bulls have had the same record at this point in the season for the last 3 years. Something is going to change, and I won't sit here and say, oh my gosh, like I'm so excited. It's like, no, Bulls at the end of the day, something's going to have to change. And there's one more thing at the end of this game that we'll talk about. I will cover that. But some other stats to go along with this Warriors-Bulls game. Josh Giddey led the team with 33 and a half minutes played, which is quite interesting since he's not a great perimeter defender. You would think that he'd be put in the game as a good perimeter defender, getting more minutes than Io, players like Javon Carter, players who are incredible when it comes to perimeter defending.
Yeah.
The Warriors' largest lead was 31 points, as Tyler said, but the Bulls' halftime score, the Bulls were up by 1 at halftime, 64-63. So we were playing pretty well in the first 2 halves there, and the game did feel a little bit closer. Another bad stat line from this game is Manas Bazilitz Buzelis had only 3 points in his 11 minutes played. He was 1 of 6 on field goals. These are those type of games where you'd love to see him play a little bit more, especially against a coach like Steve Kerr, who's going to be a little bit shook by the rookie agenda. So it would have been nice to see him just kind of be a little bit more involved there.
Yeah, I agree, man. Buzelis and a bunch of these other bench players need to be involved more. Buzelis, Julian Phillips. I think those are the two guys. We could sit here and talk about one of the guys who's been starting for the Bulls for a while, and we could do this every week. I could do this for hours. Obviously Patrick Williams has not been performing up to his $90 million, contract extension. But if, basketball, basketball teams have money, put him on the bench if he's not going to be performing well. That's why I say just pull him on the bench, let him, soak in a little bit of bench time, see if somebody else can give this team a little bit of a boost. But it's just hard because, if Billy Donovan does it, then it looks like the Bulls made a decision or a bad decision. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I do see a few things in the chat. We got Cooper Flag to the Bulls confirmed ? Probably.
Unless we get a top 2 pick, most likely not. But
no, probably
don't
not.
worry, we're gonna get another lengthy forward in this draft that can't shoot. Don't worry.
And we got Brant saying petition to get this Peter C guy on the guest host next spot. We will definitely
we
be
could
doing
pull
that.
it out. Yeah, we could pull it out.
We can get both you guys as a guest coach. We get guest speak. It just all takes some headphones and a laptop or something like that. You can even do it with your phone or something like that, and we'll help you guys out. We'd love to do that. Maybe we do like a draft edition one or something like that. Or NFL draft one. That could
be fun.
We'll definitely get some situations.
The one other thing I wanted to mention that I was going to talk about. Zach LaVine did have a report yesterday saying that his preferred spot would be to stay put in Chicago, that he wouldn't want to move anywhere. And so that kind of gives you a grand idea into the scheme of things. If you had the mindset of Arturas Karnisovas, Tyler, what are you doing at the trade deadline here? Is your idea to completely sell? And is that first round pick more important to you? Or do you want players to play up to their fullest value, try to get a play-in spot, and see if there's anything more interesting trade-wise at the end of the season?
This is a hard question, man. I don't want to see LaVine go. I really don't. I think he's been performing very well. Every year he's putting up like this, almost the same stat line, and is not degrading whatsoever. Vooch at the same hand, he's been performing really well. There, the offense is clicking. But it's just like, do we trade those assets for other people, or do we try to play for the play-in spot? Clearly, the last 2 times we've been in the play-in spot, we've gone nowhere. We've been first-round bounces out of there. I would rather get the better draft pick, but also I don't want to see these players like LaVine and Vooch go, because then our team is going to be even worse than they are now. These mock trades that I've been seeing on Twitter about what we could get for, Vooch.
Disgusting. We're getting 2032 first-round picks, bro.
I saw Julius Randle as an option. I'm like, if I see Julius Randle in a Bulls uniform, I am going to puke.
Yeah, there needs to be draft capital or keep him. Yeah. I think Zach LaVine is playing up to his potential. He's in his prime right now. It makes no sense to trade him for a first-round pick in 2031 from, I don't know, the Brooklyn Nets. Like, it makes more sense for him to play it first now. Yeah. His attention to detail is really immaculate. And he's a Billy Donovan type player. So I think we won't be able to find another player that would, have that same attention as him. But it is what it is. And I do think if the Bulls do end up keeping LaVine, I say we save the roster the way it is. Yeah. Ship out Vooch somewhere, unfortunately, and maybe even ship out Kobe. I love the team that we have right now, but obviously we can say this as many times as we want. We said this as a Bears fan every year. This team will look entirely different next season, and I can promise you that. There's a lot of different contract situations that will have to be negotiated. Yeah. But moving on from that, we got 3 more Bulls games. We're going to talk about the next 3 games that we have here. Oh, let's see what we got.
I was going to bring up this chat that Peter said. Patrick Williams needs to go so Buzelis can get playing time and necessary development for better or worse. Yeah. What Kendall Gill did say yesterday about, Buzelis, when I was working at CHSN about Buzelis, is he did say this in the postgame show that basically Buzelis, if he gets more playing time and, can get more reps and stuff like that, he can be a Cooper Flag type of player for the Bulls. Obviously I'm not saying he's going to be Cooper Flag, but he can be a player like that for the Bulls. He just needs more reps because, obviously he only played 1 year in college and he, ended up coming to the Bulls. But I think he was the best pickup in the draft for the Bulls that year. But I do agree that Patrick Williams needs to go to the bench or go elsewhere just to help other players on this, team.
Oh, yeah.
And then
kind of grow into their role. Yeah.
Before we get into the next 3 games, I do see another thing in the chat that we did talk about this last week, Brant. I know you weren't with us last week, but you did say thoughts on Derrick Rose getting his jersey hung in the rafters. Is he deserving of this? 100% he's deserving of this. Reason why I say this, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but there's 3 reasons why. And this is I'm quoting the Casey Johnson from the CHSN, Bulls inside reporter. Number 1, he was born and raised in the city of Chicago, man. Born and raised, he obviously went to Simeon, he did very well. Number 2, he basically brought this Bulls team back on the map. He got players to come to this team. Obviously, he didn't get certain players that, were rumored to come, like LeBron or anything like that, but he did get this team back on the map, back in the playoff hunt, back in the playoffs. Basically, I'm not saying by himself, but he helped that out. And number 3, he won MVP his rookie season over a prime LeBron James.
I think it was actually his sophomore or third year he won his MVP.
Derrick Rose running. Oh, wait, youngest MVP. I'm sorry, not his
youngest MVP.
Yeah, my fault. My fault.
Youngest MVP.
He's the youngest MVP. I did say that wrong, but that is like the 3 reasons why his jersey should be hung in the rafters. Nobody should wear a number 1 in Chicago anymore, in my opinion. I just think when I think of 1, I think of Derrick Rose, and that's all I think of is Derrick Rose. He is well deserving of it. Obviously, it's very unfortunate what happened with the injuries and stuff like that, but he is well deserved of this. He is.
Yeah, I think Derrick is the second best player to ever play in Bulls history.
Yeah,
I think it's like, give me Scotty, give me Bob Love, give me Dennis, give me Andres Nocioni, give me anybody. Derrick Rose is the second most athletic, second most bewildering guard, second best scorer, second best defensively at his position. And the MVP, whether it counts or not, I mean, that season, no matter who he was against, it's just the idea of that he brought to Chicago, I think, is more important than anything. And you can talk about Michael Jordan, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of Chicago fans are more impressed with Derrick Rose's appeal than Michael Jordan's appeal, just because Derrick Rose is from home. Derrick Rose retired, and then what's the city that embraced him in his retirement? That was Chicago. So again, I think that's enough said on if he's deserving or not. I think if he didn't win MVP, I think he'd be just as deserving. He concluded that chapter for Chicago in the early 2000s. He's the best thing that happened in Chicago since Jordan. So it's easy.
And the last comment to end off this Bulls chat for you guys is Peter C saying the Bulls need to trade everyone. We need to tank. We can't continue playing in mediocrity. Tear it down to the studs like Ben Johnson and build a young core. I completely agree with you, Peter. Looking at teams that have built a young core, obviously I can't. I don't know why I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but there are teams out there, that have been playing, a lot. The Pistons are one of them, but they haven't filled up to their expectations. But they do look like a team that has better expectations than the Bulls. But I completely agree with you, man.
Yeah, it's time for the Bulls to tear down, and we've talked about this. I think since DeRozan, after his first season, right where Lonzo got injured, I was already talking about it's time to tear this team down. The Bulls need to do a little bit of changing, but I think also what needs to change is if we're going to implement a new roster, I think there needs to be new coaching. Yeah. And there might even need to be a new GM in ownership in the position as well, just because there's going to be a lot of changes, but not enough. And, you got players like Io, Buzelis, Jalen Smith, a good young core. We have to make sure that we can also be a free agent destination. We look at today's NBA. Even if you're OKC, right? OKC is a team that was built from the ground up, but they still haven't won anything. So what is that direction look like, and how important is that compared to, you're looking at your Boston Celtics, your Denver Nuggets? Like, they're always involved in every free agent signing. They're not getting the biggest player, but they're getting the third or fourth biggest player. Yeah. And that's just something that we need to definitely take a look at. Bulls need to become a free agent destination. Same thing with the Bears, same thing with the Cubs, same things with the White Sox. Yeah. Chicago is such a center of Midwest classic sports that we need to start living that dream again and that reality. And that's going to start by, luring some players in. I don't know if Arturas Karnisovas has ever been that good at that. Yeah, I agree, man. And to end off, last comment, best thing to happen in this city is this podcast. Heart emoji. We appreciate it, Peter. Thanks, man. Peter. Appreciate it. Thank you, Peter. And then just to end off for you guys, we're going to talk about just the next 3 Bulls games for you guys, and we'll go right into the Blackhawks chat. I know Bulls extended out more just with all the comments and everything, but Bulls next 3 games for you guys. Bulls are playing tomorrow night at the United Center against the Philadelphia 76ers. So
that me and Danny are actually going to be at that game tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be there with a bunch of our other buddies as well. We're really excited about that. It's my first Bulls game actually in over a year that I'm going to as a fan. I did not go to anyone last year, but really excited to go to that. We're going to, we'll give you guys all of our scoops next week when we come back to you guys about the Sixers. And we got 2 more games. The next 3, obviously, January 27th, that they take on the Denver Nuggets at home. So that's going to be a tough game. Nikola Jokic is all-star starter. He's been playing at all-star level the last 5 years. So he's been playing really well. And then the January 29th. So 5 days from now, the Bulls are going to be in Boston taking on the Celtics. The Celtics just lost to the Lakers yesterday by over 20. So we'll see what the Bulls can do. The Bulls do play good against better teams. That did kind of, not happen. I against a few games ago, I forgot what it was with the Bulls, but they didn't win against one of the better teams. But we could see what happens against Boston. So we got Sixers, Nuggets, Celtics. Those are the next 3 for the Bulls, and we'll come back next week, talk more about that with you guys with that. But steering away from the Bulls with you guys, let's get right into our Blackhawks chats. The Chicago Blackhawks, obviously kind of a down year for them right now, being last place right now, but we'll get right to it. The Blackhawks are 15-28-4, second to last in the league. Last time we talked to you guys, they were last in the league. San Jose Sharks jumped them below. So, now they're second to last in the league. But let's get right to it, man. Let's get to the first game that we have for you guys, which is going to be the Blackhawks against the Predators, which was last Thursday. Obviously, last Thursday, or not yesterday, but a week ago, we met with you guys in the afternoon, and the game happened at night. The Blackhawks did, unfortunately, lose that game in a shootout, 3-2. Connor Bedard scored his 13th goal of the season in the second period, assisted by Tyler Bertuzzi as his 9th assist of the season. And then Alec Martinez also scored in the second period as well. That was his second goal of the season, assisted by Seth Jones, his 13th assist, and Tyler Bertuzzi, his 10th assist of the season. The Hawks did lead 2-1 in the third period when the Predators scored with 4 minutes left, unfortunate for the Hawks. And they did force overtime with a 2-2 score. And unfortunately, they did lose in a shootout. The Hawks were outshot that game 26-41. Usually the team that has more shots wins. Sometimes it's the polar opposite. And unfortunately, the Hawks did only win 37% of the faceoffs that game. So rough game for the Hawks. It's hard when you lose in a shootout, but when you do force that overtime, but obviously the Predators did force overtime with that 4 minutes, you do still get a point on the board. So they did get a point. Obviously they're kind of like soccer. It's with points with hockey as well. So they got a point with the overtime push with them. So unfortunately, they did lose in a shootout to the Predators, who are a decent team this year. So, kind of steering away from that. Let's go right into the next game, which is actually a fun game for the Blackhawks because this was a good team they played. The Blackhawks played the Golden Knights at home at the United Center last Saturday. I was working at CHSN that night for the Blackhawks pregame and postgame show. And it was, the Blackhawks are kind of like the Bulls. They perform better against teams that are better, which we kind of, it's kind of weird how that, it's weird how that happens, Dan, right? How sometimes maybe it's a little more of a push.
It's a Chicago thing, weirdly enough. It's a Chicago. Again, the Bears will play really well against the Lions, but then when the Seahawks come into town, we'll put up a stinker. Bulls, I'd rather them play the Clippers than the Pacers, and they're going to play better against the Clippers. It's something that happens in the Chicago Rivers, man. It's like these players have a lot of energy when they play up against better teams.
Yeah.
But yeah, Golden Knights are a pretty fantastic team this year. Obviously, number 1 with 64 points.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot of history in the last few years about the Golden Knights. They have a pretty rich history, but
they won their first year as obviously they won their first year as a franchise with the NHL.
They've been pretty strong in the last few years. They've definitely had a better record multiple years in a row than the Blackhawks, but this is a very important game for the Hawks, just again, playing with those higher seeds. Really impressed by the update here. Did we say the score of the game already?
Yeah, so they did win 5. We did not say that. They did win 5-3 against the Golden Knights, and we'll talk to you guys about the stats. You want to start it off with with the Golden Knights did?
Definitely. Okay, so the Golden Knights scored their first goal in 9 minutes in the first period, but the Hawks looked to capitalize on also some goals of their own. Lucas Reichel scored his 4th goal of the season in the first period, assisted by Nick Foligno.
There you go.
Nick Foligno. Yeah. That was his 9th assist, and Colton Dock his 3rd. So definitely went on to the right pace in the first period. And then Tyler Bertuzzi
is our
scored.
captain for the team, if you didn't know that.
Captain,
So
our
yeah, he is
captain.
our
He's our
captain. Yeah.
captain.
So yeah, Mr. Captain,
Aye, aye.
Captain.
Aye, aye. And then Tyler Bertuzzi scored from the Hawks power play in the first period as well. It was his 15th goal of the season. So definitely in his last 2 games, he's been assisting and scoring at high capacity. So that's really exciting to see. That goal was assisted by Seth Jones, which was his 14th, and Teuvo Teravainen.
You're very close. Teuvo Teravainen.
Teuvo.
Like think of like the U and the E, isn't there? So like Teuvo, like Teuvo, not Teuvo Teravainen. Some of these names, like the reason why I know like all these names and how they're said is because I work the pregame postgame show over there, so I hear them say these all the time. So that's why that's a hard one to say.
Thank
but that
God
was
we have Tyler. Thank God we have Tyler, bro, because I would not be knowing these names that well. All right, and then the Hawks scored their 3rd goal in the first period, which is a very exciting first period. Taylor Hall scored his 9th goal of the season, assisted by Pat Maroon. That was his 9th assist, and Ryan Donato his 12th assist.
And Taylor Hall right now is potentially on the NBA and NHL kind of line up pretty much. They start around the same time. Their trade deadline's coming up too. Taylor Hall is in like the trade rumors right now with the Hawks, and he did score one of the goals. He's one of the veteran presence. Unfortunately, he did get hurt last season. He tore his ACL. He was out. He only played like 5 games for the season. He tore his ACL, but yeah.
I'm sure you guys may have heard as well as Seth Jones. I mean, obviously he's another one of those veteran presence that we have on the team, and he also is in a lot of trade talks, and we'll see how that goes. Obviously trading veterans away is a bit of a risky thing, especially when you're second to last in the league, but I think could be an important change. But further on from that, we're still talking about the game here. The Golden Knights scored 2 goals in the second period to tie the game to 3-3, which is a pretty high scoring affair there.
Yeah.
And then with a minute left to go in the second period, Seth Jones found the back of the net and scored his 4th goal of the season, assisted by Connor Bedard, his 28th assist in the year, Connor Bedard, and Frank Nazar his 3rd.
Yeah, so, this was a big goal for Seth Jones. Since he came back from injury, he was in a big slump. Obviously it looked like he was bringing this team down a little bit. They weren't performing as well, not as fast. This was good for Seth Jones to get his, momentum up a little bit. And this was a, good goal for Seth Jones. Obviously, to score with a minute left in the second period, that gives your team a little bit more momentum going into the locker room. And yeah, that was good. And Frank Nazar getting his 3rd assist. He is a young prospect who got brought up from the Rockford Ice Hogs. So he's going to be a young prospect as well. But yeah, kind of going into it, the Hawks, up 4-3 going into the 3rd period. The Hawks got a power play with 4 minutes in the 3rd, and they scored that power play opportunity. That was Tyler Bertuzzi's 2nd goal of the game. He ended up scoring 16th of the season, assisted by Teuvo Teravainen, his 23rd, and Seth Jones, his 15th assist of the season. And guess what, guys? That would be the game. That would be the game. The Hawks, this is crazy stat, talking about usually the team that outshoots another team usually wins. The Hawks were outshot 23-35, but the reason why they won this game is they took advantage of the power play opportunities, 2 power play goals. So that will usually boost
and that changes the game, right? Because us winning 5-3, those 2 power play goals are exactly the reason why we had the advantage. So that gives you an idea as to playing the better teams, right? Maybe the better teams are a little bit off footing, maybe they have different energy capacity, but this Blackhawks team definitely caught them off the radar. And it's nice to see Seth Jones kind of have, like you said, a little bit more of a resurgence here. Midway through the season.
Exactly. And then also last stat we have for you guys with this game is the Hawks did win 58% of the faceoffs. We've noticed the trend this season is they haven't been winning a lot of faceoffs, but they did have more than 50% of the faceoffs, which was good for them. Really good. Great win for the Hawks, getting a win against that first place team in the Pacific Division. Great team in the Golden Knights. Obviously, there was a lot of hockey left, being up 2 goals, and they ended up capitalizing with that win. Great win for the Hawks. And we have one more game for you guys because they're on a little bit of a break now. They play tonight, actually. They're going to be playing tonight. We'll talk about that a little bit. But the Blackhawks did play the Hurricanes on Monday. So they've been off since Monday, and they played tonight. The Hawks did lose this game, unfortunately, 4-3. Not the best game again for the Hawks. The Hurricanes are a really good team. They ended up, making a strong playoff push last season. The Hurricanes are the second place right now in the Metropolitan Conference with 63 points. On top of them is the Capitals, the Washington Capitals in first place. But Dan, you want to start off with some stats, man, about this game?
Yes, let's go right ahead. So, obviously, like Todd mentioned, the Hurricanes are another one of those pretty good division players, and they have or division teams, and they have a pretty aspiring hopes this season. So, let's see how this game goes out here. The Hawks did score 2 goals in the first period, coming off strong. Philip Kurashev.
There you go.
That's so confusing because Kurashev.
Did I spell it wrong or something?
Maybe it's spelled wrong.
Hold on, let's see. I did. Oh my god. Yeah.
Kurashev, let's go.
My bad. Yeah, I did spell
Philip
it wrong.
Kurashev scored the first goal of the game. Scored the first goal of the game. Todd never makes mistakes, guys. Honestly speaking, like seriously, he's never made a mistake in his life. Tyler's 30-0. He's 30-0 with 9 KOs. Philip Kurashev scored his first goal of the game, his first goal of the season, assisted by yet again Ryan Donato, his 13th assist, and Louis Crevier.
I have no idea what this. I don't know how to say this one, unfortunately. Yeah.
If you're at home, you know what I'm talking about. We're not a name channel, we're a sports channel. It's like I always think about Kieran Amagaji. It took me 18 weeks to get to know.
It took me months to get
to know the Bears O lineman, Kieran Amagaji.
Oh my god!
All right, and for Lewis, it was his first assist of the season. Yeah. Tyler Bertuzzi scored 7 minutes later in his 13th goal of the season. So Tyler's been on a tear lately. Both Tylers. Tyler number 1 and Tyler number 2 has been on a tear lately. He scored 7 minutes with his 17th goal of the season, assisted by Seth Jones, yet again a player that's making his presence known. His 16th assist, and Frank Nazar his 4th assist. The Hawks were up 2-0 going into the first intermission break, which you'd love to see after back-to-back games against pretty heavy hitters,
Exactly. But yeah, no, unfortunately for the Hawks, that lead did deteriorate. The Canes scored quickly to start the second period, 1 minute into the period. And then 6 minutes later, the Hurricanes found themselves scoring their second goal to tie the hockey game at the United Center. Then with less than a minute to go in the second period, Ryan Donato scored his 14th goal of the season, assisted by Taylor Hall, his 15th assist of the season, and Philip Kurashev, his 3rd assist of the season. So the Hawks did get that lead going into the not third period intermission. That would be overtime. Second period intermission. Did have the lead going into that. So Hawks led the Canes 3-2 going into that break. But in the third period, it fell down a little bit for the Hawks. The Canes scored 13 minutes into the third period to tie the game up. And that would be that final goal in the regulation time. The game did go to overtime. Unfortunately for the Blackhawks, they would lose only a minute into the 3-on-3 overtime period. Sebastian Aho, who's one of the faces of the NHL right now, scored his 14th goal of the season. The Hawks did lose to the Hurricanes 4-3. So they did get a point in that category for, going to overtime, but still Hurricanes are a good team, second place in their division right now. They did lose. Unfortunately, they could not keep that lead. Seems like this is a Chicago trend, man. The Bulls, the Hawks, even the Bears at points, keeping the lead, solidifying it. It's hard though when you have a good team like the Hurricanes.
And there's an idea too of extra time, right? Chicago teams, when there's extra time on the field, you don't feel too positive about it. And obviously the Hawks are dealing with that very, very much in the last week. So hopefully the next week can look a little bit better here after this loss to the Hurricanes. The next 3 games, we play one team twice, one team home and away, and then we get another team that's actually a bit personal to me. My partner is from Minnesota, and they're playing them on the 26th. So January 24th for the Hawks, there's Tampa Bay Lightning is coming into United Center. And then January 26th, the Minnesota Wild is playing the Hawks at the United Center. And like I said, I have Minnesota for me, and like the whole Minnesota Vikings season has been really wild because I've almost had to cheer for 2 different sides, but my heart is resting in one place. And obviously we haven't gotten many wins against Minnesota. So let's beat Minnesota.
Let's do it.
My girlfriend's family, if you're watching, go Chicago, by the way. January 28th, bear down. January 28th, the Hawks play Tampa Bay Lightning in Tampa Bay, so that's going to be another away game. So we're going to have a few fun Chicago games back and home here. So obviously we'll be over at the United Center tomorrow, and the Hawks will be playing multiple games there as well. So that's going to be fun. Yeah, we'll see how those goes, and I think those are going to be some pretty good games for, again, the Hawks. If the Hawks can manage to win all 3 of these games, that would immediately lift them from second worst in the league to 5th worst in the league, right? So that's kind of the difference here. And so we're trying to go game by game here with the Hawks and try to understand how these teams is going. But definitely the last 2 games, as I mentioned, I think there's going to be a lot more presence felt with Seth and Tyler and the way Connor's playing. So I think, a good mix of the way the offense is going here. So
yeah, I agree, man.
Excited for that.
Yeah, it'll be a fun night tomorrow. I'm really excited to watch the Bulls game with you. We'll get some drinks, get some basketball Saturday night. And it'll be fun, man. It'll be fun. And so that is going to do it for our Blackhawks chat for you guys. We talked about, Bulls talk, Blackhawks chat for you guys. And now basically, we're going to just, before we go away, we'll get you caught up on some other, news with the Chicago sports. Oh, that's not our fun facts. We're not getting to that yet. We're going to get to our, oh my God, where is it? Oh, there we go. Other Chicago sports news. There we go. So White Sox and Padres, they made a trade. San Diego gets right-handed pitcher Ron Marinaccio. We're not good at games, guys. Don't sue us. I'm sorry. For cash consideration. So that was kind of the one trade with the White Sox. I was working at CHSN yesterday, and it was actually a cool day because they had Chuck Carfine came in for one of the shows. And the general manager for the White Sox came in.
I heard about that.
So it was a cool thing. He was answering a lot of questions. It was like a 15, 20-minute sit down. He answered a lot of questions. He's hopeful for a lot of these players coming back, Colton Montgomery to be a big contributing factor with the White Sox coming up. And there's a lot of good farm system with the prospects. They have like the best farm left-handed pitching right now. That's another stat for you guys, but it's going to be White Sox are looking to bounce back, obviously, after having a losing last season. But so that's pretty much like the other Chicago sports news we have for you guys. Cubs really didn't do anything. They had CubsCon. It was an exciting weekend last weekend. Sammy Sosa made his return to the city.
Yeah.
They honored him, and I saw a bunch of my coworkers, went to that. But CubsCon looked like it was a lot of fun, and it's always a big event every year at the Marriott on the Mag Mile. So good for CubsCon to be back, and good for Sammy Sosa to be back. But yeah,
let's get to the fun part.
Let's wrap up this podcast with some Chicago sports fun facts for you guys. And
as you guys know, these fun facts, we've kind of changed the narrative a little bit. They're not always so fun. They're not always incredibly fun here. So
it might be mediocre.
The first 2 are not fun. The last 2 are pretty interesting, pretty fun. So, Tyler, I don't know if you wanted to start us off, or you wanted me to start us off. I'll let you choose.
I'll have you start it off, bro.
Okay. All right. So the Chicago Blackhawks this season are above league average when it comes to penalty killing percentage at 82.9%. The league average was 77.8%. Well, so it's 5%, but can, again, give you an idea as to a little bit of the waste management or the management in general of how a lot of these, the coaching, I would say, is a big step in this direction, of seeing where that goes. All right. So there's the first one there. Here's a bad one. I just want to put this in because, White Sox made a move this year. So let's just give the people a reminder of what they got to look forward to. In their last 45 games, the Chicago White Sox finished 4-41, which is the worst record in a 45-game span since the 1916 Philadelphia A's.
Yeesh.
Philadelphia A's no longer exists anymore.
Yeah. That's not a fun fact. That's an ugly fact.
Yeah. Cheer me up,
Chicago
Tom.
sports ugly fact.
Cheer me up. Well, let's get some good ones in here.
Let's get a good one. How about this? Bears new head coach Ben Johnson is a lifelong Cubs fan. That's a fun fact for you.
That's a fun fact.
That's a fun fact. I really think he did say that was a big reason why he came to the city. Is the last 10 years, him and his family came to Wrigley for at least one game a season. They enjoy the atmosphere of Wrigley. That could be another major contributor why Ben Johnson sided with this team.
Yeah, a lot of photos surfaced of him at games, of him with his family, wearing merch and stuff like that. And he told a story, I believe, on a Chicago podcast yesterday, saying how he was on a 6-year waiting list to get his brother season tickets for the Cubs.
Oh, wow.
And it was under his name, and he did confirm that it was 6 to 8 years he waited for season tickets. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of him this season, and definitely Tyler, expect to see him throwing out the first pitch one of these days, So that's going to be exciting as well. And then this last one I found out today. This last one I saw a video on today, which I found really interesting.
You want to take it?
Oh, sure.
I
So
think mine
St.
got cut
Viator.
off for some reason. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. So
Yeah.
St. Viator, a local high school in the Chicagoland area, their baseball coach a few years ago urged current tight end Cole Kmet to enter the MLB in high school, and he came out with a recent interview. I believe it was yesterday, saying how he still believes that Cole Kmet would have made a huge dent in the MLB, saying that he was the only kid in Illinois at the time that was throwing 85 to 90 mile per hour balls, but also killing it from home plate. He was hitting home runs left and right. And they showed a lot of fun videos on there of him hitting home runs, of him throwing out pitches. And they said that he was twice the size of the average high schooler. So he would have fit that Mike Trout role. You never know.
Kyle Schwarber kind of guy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A heavy hitter, but then also a tremendous arm. Not much of a reliever, but definitely would have had some pitching prowess there in the MLB. So
wow,
that's just another interesting thing to look
like
about.
that. That's a fun fact.
That is a fun fact.
A fun fact, right?
yeah. So there you go, Cole Kmet.
Yeah,
I guess it's never too late, buddy. I don't know if he wants. He got Ben Johnson now, so you might as well stay.
Stay, man. It's gonna be a fun year. It'll will. And I see one more chat we got before we end off for you guys. We got Peter saying, "Oh, hold on, take me 2 seconds." He said, "Don't worry. Once we develop these lefties, we'll just trade them to the Red Sox." It's hard to say. I was a huge fan of Garrett Crochet, and it's unfortunate he got traded.
Yeah,
but had to happen.
I was a bit confused by the move, but you know what? It seems like the White Sox, there's not a lot of answers for anything right now. So if it's moving on from players is what they got to do, then
it might be the case. Yeah. All right, guys. That is pretty much going to end it off for you guys. We're about an hour 15 in the podcast. And, obviously we got all the Ben Johnson news for you guys. We can talk about him for hours and hours, but we can't be sitting here for hours and hours with you guys because Dan's got a night ahead of him. And, obviously I got a night ahead of me drinking some coffee and, doing something with my girlfriend tonight. So we appreciate you guys, tuning in, to our podcast. We love bringing you guys the best and, the Bears, Blackhawks, the Bulls with you guys. We'll be back every week doing our UC chat with the Bulls and the Hawks. And we'll get you guys the latest up to date with the Bears as well with, the new coaches that are going to be signed and whatever, news kind of comes out with the Chicago sports. We'll try to bring that up with you guys. But before we end off, man, is there anything you want to say?
No, just thankful for you guys. We're approaching a new part of the year where obviously we start to talk less about one team, more about the others. And we are very excited to get back into the Bulls and, Hawks kind of regimen. Tyler, I think there's going to be a lot more games that we're going to have to go to ourselves. I think we should hit up a Hawks game at some point in the future. We got our Bulls game tomorrow, so we'll give you guys some updates. And we're figuring things out slowly. Hopefully sooner or later we'll be able to show photos or videos or sound bites of how these things that, of how the games go and how we look and what kind of beer we're drinking and stuff like that. So that would be a very exciting part. So stay tuned for those. We'll get better and we'll get better at your coverage to show you guys how those things go.
Yeah. And obviously lots of different games coming up, Hawks and Bulls. We're going to try to get to, obviously I haven't been to a Hawks game yet this year. I've been working a bunch of the pregame, postgame shows. Tomorrow will be my first Bulls game in over a year. It's going to be a lot of fun for us. And we'll give you guys our reactions next week about the Bulls Sixers game tomorrow. No Embiid tomorrow. So it's going to be
no Embiid. Let's go.
No Embiid. And we'll see how the Bulls play tomorrow. We're going to end off right there, guys. Thank you guys so much again. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the divisional, or not divisional. Oh my God. Enjoy the conference football games, Bills, Chiefs, and Commanders, Eagles. It's great games on Sunday, 2 and 5:30. That's what time those games start. Enjoy those games. Get your bets in. Make some money. And
make some money.
And enjoy your weekend. Hopefully it gets warmer this week. I think it is.
Exactly.
Get warmer here.
Go Bears. The Bears, you have got Ben Johnson. Boom.
We've got Ben Johnson.
There's a magic spell casted on Chicago.
The future is bright.
Yes.
But, all right. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy your weekend. And as always, bear
down. See you later, guys.
UC.
And win for Chicago.
Win. W.
Win.
All right. Have a great weekend, guys.
Thanks guys. See ya.
Nice, dude.
And we kept it pretty tight, too. A lot of information.
Bulls took longer than Hawks.